of very special folks that are going to share the good news with us today, or a reflection on the good news, I should say. John McLeod and John Pentland, who come to us from Calgary, from Hillhurst United Church in Canada. They have been with us since April, working with our Way Forward leadership team and the whole congregation, thinking about how God is calling us to move ahead for this time, in this place, in this community. And so we're looking forward to hearing their words. But first, we're going to hear God's word, and that's going to come to us through Keith, John chapter 1.
The next day, John again was standing with two of his disciples. And as he watched Jesus walk by, he exclaimed, "Look, here is the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard him say this, and they followed Jesus. When Jesus turned and saw them following, he said to them, "What are you looking for?" They said to him, "Rabbi," which translated means teacher. "Why are you staying?" He said to them, "Come and see." They came and saw where he was staying, and they remained with him that day. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. One of the two who heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated anointed. He brought Simon to Jesus, who looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You are to be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Okay, it says in the bulletin there that Dawn and I are both preaching, and we flipped the coin. I'm not sure if I won or lost. You can decide at the end of the day whether you wish it was Dawn or not me. Whether you win or lose. But I'm really pleased to be here. Dawn is a colleague of mine at Hillhurst United Church. Hillhurst United Church is in Calgary. We have 4 core practices when we gather. We practice hospitality. We recognize you got to eat. When you eat and drink together, you're changed. Conversation. Eat and drink together. Second is spirituality. That it's when we nurture our souls, we are transformed and changed. Religion these days is often a bad word, a place that people are shunned, and we need to be about good religion and good spirituality. We always say every week that it's one of the most courageous things you could do all week is walk into a church. And so we want to nurture, recognize not all people are religious at all, but we're all spiritual. The third practice in our church is social justice. It's easy to love everybody for an hour on Sunday. What do you do tomorrow? How do you engage in the public life faithfully? So social justice is a significant attribute of our church practice. And the fourth is risk. We realize that one of the most common phrases of Jesus is "be not afraid." So why are churches so fearful? So we have to be about risk, and continually we say, are we risking here? Are we afraid? So those are the 4 practices. The banner up front says, whoever you are, wherever you're at, join us in the journey. And that is good news, and sometimes it's challenging news, because that means people come in. What does that mean for us? How do we recognize wherever you are, wherever you're at, join us? And so that's where I'm from. I want to introduce myself slightly a bit more. I grew up in Ontario, and we know where that is. Yes, all right. And then in 1988, I was transferred to Alberta and ordained that year to serve in a rural area. In 1988, the United Church of Canada was the year that we said that the sexual orientation is not a barrier to becoming a minister, that all people were welcome to lead. There was a big schism in our church in 1988. Imagine moving from downtown Toronto to Pickerville. Nobody here goes to Pickerville. Pickerville had about, that many people over there in the whole town. And we had 3 churches. One had 40, one had 30, one had 12. And when the 12 were all there, we started church. We were there in that time period. It was a small community. The closest town was about 20 minutes away, 5,000 people. It was small because I remember going to the pharmacy, and the woman called me over. She your deodorant is on sale. It's a small town and they know your deodorant, okay? I was there 4 years in a rural area, thinking about what we talked about yesterday. In a rural area, small churches, you're the visitor as a minister. You're just dropping in. I was there 4 years. That's the longest they ever had a ministry. Then I moved to Calgary, to a large suburban church. This is in the 90s. 2 services, a couple of hundred kids, booming place. They had built the building, but they hadn't built the church. And so was the development of the church. I was there 10 years. And then I did the best thing in ministry. I got out of the ministry. And I went and worked at the United Way in Calgary, which is an organization that gets you engaging with the city. What goes on? We always think we're doing it. There's so many people doing great things in great organizations. So how does the church fit in? So I learned a lot in 3 years and came back to Hillhurst, which I've been for 15 years. It's an inner city church that has moved through 4 sizes of churches, from a small family church to a corporate church now. We have 2 services on a Sunday, and it's a large, vibrant, changing place. About a year and a half ago, I was going off work because I was getting a new hip. And so I met with my friend Don at a coffee shop, and I said, Don, I'm going off for 6 months or so. Would you come and fill in? Well, he did. And we kept him. We didn't let him go. So Don has been on staff with us half-time, and then the other half-time he's a consultant. And so we've been delighted to work with your church for the last year. I spoke here, I believe, last April, and then Don was here. In between time, we've been talking to your leadership team. Can you just put up your hands if you're on that team? These are the people you got to take aside if you want to know more information. These are people working on your behalf of your church to store through the next phase of church life. One of the things I've discovered is that churches that are already doing well often ask to get better. And that's exactly who you are. Look at your full as an example. You're asking, what's the next wave of our development as a church? The churches that are stuck or not doing well, they don't even ask for help. So just know the fact that you are taking a pause and sorting through your next phase of the church is a really good sign as a church. And so I want to thank you for inviting us to be part of the community. We had Jane and some of the people from this congregation up in Calgary this past year. And so we're in partnership with you, whether you know it or not. And we're very curious and excited to see how your church develops, and that's a great thing. That's a long introduction. So here's what I really want you to do right now. I want you to talk to somebody you don't know, or somebody behind you or beside you, maybe 2s or 3s, no more than that. If you came with somebody and you don't want to talk to them, that's fine. Or if you don't like them, you don't know. This is a chance for you to just answer this quick question. And the question is this: does church matter? And if so, how? What matters about church? Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to invite you to talk to each other for 2 minutes. Just meet somebody. Hi, my name's John, or Dave, and say, okay, you're going to chat about why church matters to the person near you. There you go. Yeah, I know you're welcome to do that. I did do a TED Talk once, and they gave you 7 minutes. If you went over 7 minutes, they started to clap you off the stage. And maybe they clap you off the stage. It was a nice way of saying thanks very much. You might want to continue that conversation. We had a rich one, a really rich one. There's some vulnerability to sharing why it matters. And I invite you with people later today over coffee to say why it matters. What matters is a story we might want to tell. Let's pray. Let us pray. We come today each with different awareness. Some of us were dragged here. Some of us couldn't wait to get here. Some of us sauntered here. And some of us ran, eager to sing, to see, to know. Be in our daydreaming, in our remembering, as we remember who we are and whose we are. We give thanks for these 4 walls and the invitation to come here and then to leave and move in your world, to be your hands and feet and voice. Be among us, we pray. Amen. In November this past year in Calgary, we were having Brian McLaren come. Brian McLaren is in Florida. He's an American, great public theologian. Anybody know Brian McLaren's name? A few of you. Terrific person who I had taken a course with, and I invited him to come out to be in Calgary for the weekend. We thought, well, we got this American coming up. That's great, but what about us Canadians and us which is our airport quote, why church? Why church? Does church matter or not? And so on the Friday of that event, we set up a day in our sanctuary. We had about 175 people came from all over Alberta and a bit from BC and Saskatchewan. We posed the question, why church? Does church matter? And I had arranged 10 speakers to talk for 10 minutes, which sounds absolutely crazy, but it worked. We had 10 people to come to speak from our city about why church matters. And as an example, we had a United Church minister, a young person ordained in 2018, so very new in the ministry. She talked about the importance that church played, that it mattered to her family when her father became ill with cancer, and how the church surrounded her, and then when he died, where food kept coming to the house, there was nurture and care for her as a young person, a United Church clergy. We had a Presbyterian clergy, another young woman who had just been ordained, moving from East Coast to Calgary, talking about why the church mattered for her and how she grew up in the church camps, and how camps mattered to her and shaped her in her understanding of the church, and then how the importance that climate is and climate change is, and so how camps influenced her way of thinking about God. We also had we had an atheist who's a big blogger in the city, a young gay guy, a fantastic guy. He talked about the fact he didn't know much about church. He said, he was looking at what a Presbyterian was, and he thought it was a sandwich. Like a Presbyterian sandwich, he thought about. But when he spoke, he talked about how what was nice as an LGBTQ person was he knew that our church was an affirming voice in the city, and when they were about to have a pride parade once, they realized they didn't have any flags. Who did they call but us? So we recognized our church as being involved in the LGBTQ issue. He also talked about why he came to church on Remembrance Day in our church, which is November 11th. He said, I come to Hillhurst because there's warm coffee and there's a warm service. But he talked about that warmth is important. So here's a non-church guy saying it mattered. We also had a woman who doesn't come to our worship but watches us on Facebook Live. She helps us plan our worship. And she's a media person. She talked about how she grew up in the church as a kid, and then she left the church, and she talked about the role of women. I was disturbed the way women were treated in the church, and so she's not part of the church. In her 10-minute talk, the end of it, all she said was, church, maybe. So we had also a contemplative, a guy who's got a PhD in medicine, teaches at the University of Calgary. He studies fruit flies all day long. And then he got a PhD. Now he's returning to the university to get a Master of Divinity degree to become a minister. And he's holding together religion and science together as he explores the contemplative path. How the contemplative path is informing his understanding of faith. And he talked about the importance of religion and science and silence and mystery, how it comes together. It was a great day as we came together to explore, does church matter or not? We ended up with yes and maybe. And as I thought about this question and realized that I got to answer this too, and you might write your own little sermon on this, but I began to think about, does church matter or not to me? I've been in and out of the church my whole life. And does church matter or not? And so when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the text that you heard a few moments ago. There's this back and forth conversation where Jesus is coming to town, and John looks over and says, look, there's the Lamb of God. Jesus hears him and says, what do you want? John says, where are you staying? Jesus says, come and see. So they visit and they stay over all night long. And the next day, Jesus says, come follow me. Philip says, well, I just got to do one quick thing. He runs over to tell Nathaniel, I've come see the Messiah. Nathaniel says, the Messiah, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Now in Calgary we would say, can anything good come out of Edmonton? I don't know what you would want to say here, but there's that sense of, can anything good come there? And Philip then says these great words that he's heard from Jesus, and the words are simply this, come and see. The whole of the Christian story is in some ways a show and tell. You see Jesus moving around the communities in varieties of different places, inviting people to come and see what God has done. Come and see what God is doing. come and see what God will do with your life and my life. Come and see. So the come and see phrase, there it fits very well with this church matter or not. And I want to answer this question for you and with you as I consider our church and your church. So now you got about 15 minutes if you're wondering how long this is going to take, okay? The first one that I thought about is this, the come and see. When I think about come and see, I think about church matters to me because it connects me. Church connects me. Church connects me to the people I might see or know or bump into or rub shoulders. It bumps into people I like and people I can't stand. It bumps me into people I don't know and yet I will come to know. It encourages me to know people who are very rich and very poor. And connection is so important that we gather together as a church to connect. We connect to who I am and to who you are and who God is in us. And when I think about that, I think about a particular person in our community who is in some sense was the heart of the community. Paul was a guy who grew up in Ontario but made his way to Alberta and ended up being a homeless person in our neighborhood. Now, Paul would come to church on Sunday, sometimes in bare feet, sometimes not. There was often a waft of alcohol following Paul as he came in. During the sermons, Paul would sometimes answer the questions. If I said, "What do you think about this?" he would stand up and tell us what he thought. Paul had brown, black hands because he was very good at making fires to keep warm in Calgary, not something you have to worry about down here. But Paul was also the most generous person you could ever imagine. When Paul would panhandle, he would sit up against the wall with his can, and if a kid came by, he'd pull out of the can a toonie, which is a $2 coin, and say, "Hey, do something with this." He'd give his money away. Sometimes Paul would show up on Sunday morning and he would place flowers on the communion table that he had borrowed on his way to church. I remember at Christmas when he gave one of the staff members a Christmas tree he had borrowed. He also was someone who was very aware. We kept his money in our church because he didn't have a bank account. I remember a day he walked out of church and he poked us on me on the shoulder and said, "Pentland, send some money to the firefighters in Fort McMurray who were fighting the fires." He said, "They deserve it." I hadn't even thought about giving any money away. And he was asking me to give his money away. He was also somebody who was aware of what was going on in the church, and he would show up at weddings sometimes. He would find out there was a wedding in the morning. He would go and buy a card for the couple, and he'd spend his day circulating the community to get it signed. And then at the wedding, he would pop out as the bride and groom were coming down the aisle after the wedding to hand them this beautiful grubby card filled with hundreds of names on it. He was that kind of generous, crazy kind of guy. Well, February 2 years ago, he died. Fentanyl overdose. I never cried so hard for anybody in our church in 15 years when I heard about his death. We decided that we were going to have a funeral for Paul, and so we put out a notice and we had a service at our church, and we weren't sure if anybody was going to come, but 250 people, the church was full, 250 people came. In the back row where there was a group of firefighters. They knew Paul because he was always setting fires. I'm not sure if they were there to make sure he was dead, just saying. They were all there, plus his lawyer, plus his social worker, rich people, black people, white people, gay people, straight people, you name it, were gathered. And I remember standing in the front looking out and saying to myself, here is the kingdom of God. Someone who had so little touched so many. And he overturned our understanding about who can sit in a church and how you are church and what you wear in church and what you do in church and what you say in church. He connected us one to another by his life. He was the one who connected our community and continues to connect. From that service, we collected $5,000, which goes to a feeding program in our church to honor the work of Paul. Now, connection happens, and I know you have a feeding program in this church that connects you to people I know that are not like you, but invite you to a conversation, a real conversation. At our church, when we meet people twice a week over lunch, we meet people who are not like us to say, what's it like? How are you? And the people that come say, oh, what they love about the church is not so much the food, although the food's great. They love that the church treats them like human beings, that wants to know their name, that wants to know their story, that connects them one to another. So for me, the church connects us. And your church is doing this work too, connecting people who are very different than each other in this place. Connection is why church matters. The second is conscious. The church awakens my conscience. Do you know you have a banner in your gym, or whatever you call that fellowship hall? It talks about worship. It says to worship is to quicken the conscience. It's up on the wall in there. Go check it out. Somebody make it. The church quickens the conscience. It couldn't be better. The church quickens our conscience because it wakes us up. We suddenly see each other differently. We see the world differently. We see who we're called to be differently. But it's also consciousness is something we all have. Our unconscious is the thing that bites us in the butt. Consciousness wakes us up to who we are and who we could be. We all have a consciousness, a way of viewing the world that matters, a wider perspective. Consciousness wakens us. That's why Paul says, now I see in a mirror dimly, then I see face to face. Now I know in part, then I'm fully known. Our consciousness, when we're awake to our consciousness, we are awakened. Our heart is quickened. We are fully alive. And the church, through what we do here, should prick our conscience. Maybe make us a little cranky or guilty, but also poke our conscience and wake us up to the beauty that we are. How did I see this? How do I know this? There's a guy in our church named Riley, 16-year-old guy, ends up with Lyme disease. You know what Lyme disease is? It's a debilitating disease. For 4 years in a row, I thought I was doing his funeral. I thought he was going to die, literally. Young guy, there was no medical help. He was living in great difficulty. He would lay in his bed, and he would point to the sheets and have them removed from his body because the weight was too much. He would say to his parents, close the drapes because the rustling of the leaves was hard on his eyes. He would say to them, please don't brush your teeth down the hall because the sound hurts my ears. Talk about sensitivity. One day his dad came to him and said, Riley, I'm sure you want to transcend, you want to leave your body. It's okay to leave. Riley couldn't respond, but when Riley got better, he said to his dad, Dad, I remember the day you said that to me. Do you want to escape and leave your body? He said, yeah, I did. How I survived was not transcending my body. It was descending to my soul. When we descend to our soul, all of us have a soul. I don't care whether you go to church or not. You all have a soul. And when you descend to your soul, your consciousness is quickened. He said he lay there and he thought about the people he knew, the places he'd been, the food he'd eaten, the games he'd played, and all of the things that mattered in his soul. And descending to his soul saved his life. Church, when it quickens our conscience, saves our life. And good church should quicken our conscience, as your sign says. So the programs you run here, the education you do, the experiences you have, the songs you sing, the scripture you read, all that we do should quicken our conscience. The third C, there's only two left, okay, the third one is comfort. The church of comfort, it sucks out there. It's hard work living a life. You hear about shootings, you hear about violence, you have well, I won't talk about your president, but you have all of these things in our life that are a challenge to who we are. And it should comfort us, in particular when life has hurt us. I remember a family named the Nash family. They were, Howard and Jean were flying from Calgary to Edinburgh for a holiday. And they got on the plane, they flew to Edinburgh, they got off the plane, and the police came to them and said, you got to fly back to Calgary. There's been a death in your family. They didn't know anything about who had died. Can you imagine flying from Calgary to Edinburgh being told you've got to fly back and not know? This was 20 years ago, 25. There was no texting, there was no email. They got back on the plane and they flew back and they discovered that their son Andrew had died. Andrew was a young man who liked to drive cars fast. And he drove cars I understand what it's like to lose a family member, but a child is indeed one of the hardest heartbreaks of a parent. And I remember looking in that passage, you know the passage, in my Father's house there are many rooms, if it were not so would I have told you, I go and prepare a place for you, that where I am you may be also. And the word mentions my Father's mansion as a great etymology. You know what it is? I mean, the word mention, there's many ways you could talk about it, but one of them is pit stop. Now, can you imagine? I was doing the sermon that day, and I looked out at the Father, and I said, Andrew has died, but Andrew has entered the pit stop. His eyes bulged out of his head, and a smile came across his face, because there was something about the fact that my son has died in a car accident, has entered a pit stop, which is repair and healing, and moves on to the mystery of life beyond death that none of us know is, only that we trust happens. And comfort comes in the etymology and the work that your pastor does and you do to understand the words of Scripture and what they mean and how they comfort us when life has hurt us. Good church comforts us, and that's an okay thing. It needs to comfort us. The things you do here at the church comfort you in your journey. The last C that I could come up with is that we don't stay here. The church commissions you. We don't stay here all the time. We're not meant to stay here all the time. We're meant to drop in here like a pit stop and move on to do things. That part of our ministry is not just here, but in the world. How are we engaged in the world? In 1986, I was in Nicaragua. Not in 1986, President Reagan was going to invade Nicaragua. I was there. There's only 3 million people in that country, but there was going to be an invasion while I was there by the United States, they were saying at the time. I was terrified. I remember touring with a group of Presbyterians around Nicaragua, and we came into a Catholic church, and I looked around the Catholic church, and I stepped out of the church to a courtyard across from the church, and there was a crucifix. And the hands and feet were broken off. And someone had written in chalk underneath these words, Yo no tengo manos, tú eres mis manos. Means, I have no hands, you have my hands. That's what it means to be commissioned. When we leave the church, we're commissioned to be the hands and feet and voice of Christ in the world. And it sends us to do the justice work, the compassion work, the neighborly work, to invite people to come and see the church and the world. And so those are the 4 C's that I think about as I think about the church, and I think about our role as church. We are invited to move beyond these walls, and hang on to that word beyond, because I think it came out of yesterday, a sense of beyond for this church. Now I want to close with these words of Rumi. If you Google Rumi, he's apparently one of the best known, he's not American, he's Persian, but poets. And he writes these words that stick, I think, about church. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. I can imagine Jesus nodding at those words, because we are invited to be the church here and in the world, and invite people to come and see. Because that come and see is the invitation to God that you and I get the privilege of living out. May God be with us as we journey.